Welcome everybody to some more super spicy speculation. I'm actually a little bit late coming to this data mine this time around, as I've been in Germany for the weekend, so I haven't had a chance to touch it. However, these patches are sort of accumulative, and when I talk about one patch, I'll be talking about the older patches, so I want to do this so I can talk about it next time when I come back to it. I might just link back to this video when I talk about some of the champions or some of the features coming. So if you didn't know about data mining, some people go into the data files, have a look what the hi-rez team are currently working on for Paladins, and then release what their findings are. This time around it's from smite-datamining.com, and as always, nothing is final here. Everything's subject to change, and some things may be interpreted a little wrongly. However, the data mines have been very spot on, with the champions getting pretty much everything right. Some cards change and some abilities change, and names change with code names. Sometimes there's 2 code names, sometimes there's 1, and I'll come back to that later. But at the very least, it's a bit of fun. And be sure to let me know your super spicy speculation in the comment section below as I go through and talk about some of the things coming. So the biggest one for me is more evidence of a new game mode coming. If you didn't know, in the old version of Paladins, in the alpha, the game was very different, and the siege mode was also very different. Before, instead of a payload, there was a siege engine, which you'd have to move to the enemy's base, and that would attack the gates, and there'd be 2 sets of gates, and then basically the final base which you destroy, and with that it was quite a bit more like a MOBA game. Now when I played the alpha, I didn't play for all too long. The game back then was very clunky and the maps were quite big. There was a lot of space that seemed to be not used very much in these old siege maps. However, the game mode was fun, but it didn't quite capture me as much as the Paladins in its current state is, and what it was in beta when I came back to the game. However, I do very much think that having this flavour of something that's a lot more like the traditional MOBAs could draw in a new crowd, and also will just be another fun option to be able to play. Why is it more likely to happen now then? The siege mode has actually been in the data files for ages, and even all of the voice lines on all the characters have some elements talking about this old siege mode. Often characters will be like, attacking the gates! This time around, the labels are a little bit different. Instead of gates, they've got Tower A and Tower B and a castle. And in some ways, I kind of hope that they take the old mode they had before, make the maps a bit more streamlined, as they were a bit too open. And it was designed with the idea in mind that you'd be able to remount, because in the old version of Paladins in the alpha, you used to be able to get back on your horse again, so everybody was pretty much super mobile without having mobile abilities. So maybe they'll take some of the philosophy of sort of having 2 flank routes and a central zone for pushers. Again, maybe this time around with the 2 towers, maybe there's going to be more of a traditional MOBA push where there's a tower that can attack you and your allies and is a danger and you don't really want to fight around, and you try and fight before that. Or sometimes you take the risk and you dive into the tower and you're at a disadvantage, but maybe if you all go together you can take somebody out, and maybe it'll work a lot more like a traditional MOBA game, although that's all spicy speculation at the moment. But I think it's a good idea because it gives options for people that aren't necessarily as interested in Paladins as it is now. It is sort of more of a MOBA than Overwatch, and this is why I think it's more of an option, but it's giving more of the flavour to people that maybe already play LoL and Dota that could come over. And as always, having all the game modes as options is just giving you different ways to play and keeping things fresh. What does everybody else think about this game mode? Be sure to let me know, and it could really shake things up and make a ruckus with Paladins again. The next big thing, and I've talked about before, is the champion tagged demon, who has now been updated to be called Talus. Now usually champions have 1 code name, sometimes they can have 2, so we're likely getting Talus. Like Strix was Al before, then became Strix. But also, we have all of his cards, all of his legendary cards, and most of the abilities roughly explained, and we can speculate on what the abilities are with what the cards do. Will this champion come out in OB58? I'm not entirely sure, as the hi-rez team did say that they were going to try and put the brakes on a little bit with champion releases in August, but whether or not we're still going to get the regular double champion release and have one next time, I'm not entirely sure, because before they had 1 champion release, they took a break for 2 weeks, then they had 2 champions in the space of a month, so you basically had a champion every 3 weeks. So with Talus the champion, there is talk about a normal form and a demon form, and also a first and a second hit. Now that we have seen Strix, the new champion, where they can switch between weapons, but also switch between abilities, does this champion also have something very similar and have 2 variations there? The main attack seems to be some sort of tele-punch, and I've talked about this before, like a teleporting projectile that has a cone of fire and works with zoom, so it's almost like a sniper punch. You're firing fists through the air. Now, I've talked about it before, does it work a bit like Asher's weapon where it explodes at a certain range but instead here, Talus fires out of the warp where they're teleporting. Does the fist come out at a certain range so you can use it further away, but you have to position yourself backwards to fire it. So when I talk about Talus abilities, it's worth talking about their cards as well, because the cards reveal quite a few things. So first of all, Rune of Travel seems to be their teleportation ability. Now, one of the things that's interesting here is there seems to be a duration of the Rune of Travel. So the card Eternal gives 1, 2, 3, or 4 seconds at each levels to the duration of Rune of Travel. Revitalize 1, 2, 3, or 4 also is interesting because it says Rune of Travel heals you for 200, 400, 600, 800 when you teleport to it. So these are most interesting because A, it's got a duration, and B, it seems to be something that you can put down. It gives us an idea of what Talus can do. It's likely you're going to be using this teleport to go up to enemies, maybe harass them, maybe do damage to them, and then use it to blink out and get away, almost like the wormhole Eevee where you're basically blinking in and blinking out. This champion could do something quite similar. The other card's Evanescence, you move faster when Rune of Travel is active, and Transient I think is listed wrong. It says the duration of Rune of Travel is reduced by 1, 2, 3, or 4 seconds. I'm guessing it's the cooldown is reduced by 1, 2, 3, or 4 seconds, but I might be wrong. Maybe there's a reason why you'd want it to be shorter, but I can't think of one at the moment. So the other two legendary cards I didn't mention were Inner Strength. So with Rune of Travel now resets the cooldown of Overcharge and Blitz upper once you activate it. So that's interesting, just basically resets your abilities. And Faustian Bargain, Rune of Travel no longer automatically activates when the duration ends. If the rune is not used, the cooldown is reset. So that's interesting on Rune of Travel, as we know now that unlike Eevee with Wormhole, where you can just blink back whenever, and if it ends, you stay where you are. Here, you're dragged back to that rune, even if you don't want to be, but you can change that with Faustian Bargain. But also, it's interesting because then you can put down another Rune of Travel straight away, so you can be very active with that teleport. There's an ability called Blitz Upper. Now, as the main attack is throwing a fist, throwing it through teleportation, is Blitz Upper almost like an uppercut with a punch, and maybe you get close to somebody, knock them up into the air, as there is listed something about a knockup. But there's also listed something about a spike rock wall and a firewall. So like I talked about before, maybe there's two modes and two different ways of attacking somebody. Maybe the spike wall, maybe you even get some mini stun. Maybe the firewall does some damage to the enemy, and maybe a dot. Maybe you'd use one to initiate on an enemy or pin them down for your allies, or if you're soloing somebody, you maybe use a firewall just for the pure damage. That's very speculative, but we'll go through the cards for Blitz Upper. So the first one is Carry Through. You hit up the enemy with Blitz Upper, grants you 10, 20, 30, or 40% movement speed for 3 seconds, so maybe getting up close and personal and really getting into somebody. Daredevil, activate Blitz Upper, heals you for 50, 100, 150, or 200. And Darksight, hitting an enemy with Blitz Upper reveals them for 1, 2, 3, or 4 seconds. And Relic Affinity, hitting an enemy up will generate 4, 8, 12, or 16 ammo. That one's quite interesting because 16 ammo is quite a lot, so it suggests that their weapon could perhaps be more automatic, or at least have a large magazine size, or whatever it is. If it's fists, then it's not going to be magazine, but it could also mean that there's not just one version of attacking, like this sort of scoped in punch. Maybe there's another mode that you have that's a bit more closer up. There's another skill called Overcharge, which seems to be some sort of bonus damage or something whilst you're using your attacks. Now we'll just go over their cards. Ancient Power. When you hit an enemy whilst Overcharge is active, it reduces the cooldown of Blitz Upper by 0.5, 1, 1.5, or 2 seconds. Again, it's something that's active on you as like a buff. Antediluvian. Enemies hit by Overcharge receive 20, 40, 60, or 80% reduced healing. So it seems like something that you can initiate on to try and kill one single target, to not let them be able to be healed up whilst you're dueling them. Primeval Might gains 8, 16, 24, or 32% lifesteal, so your dueling potential is increased. And Reclamation 1, 2, 3, or 4, activating Overcharge generates 4, 8, 12, or 16 ammo. So that one's interesting as it's giving you ammo before you start doing your big damage. And so you could duel somebody with your normal damage and run out, and then use your Overcharge to get your ammo back without reloading and fight them with whatever the buff is. It's also interesting because there is a talent related to Overcharge, which is called Raging Demon, and you no longer consume ammo whilst Overcharge is active, so basically buffing you up whilst you're using whatever this buff is to be able to use it without having to reload. Just to quickly cover the armor and weapon cards, there's Guts, 1, 2, 3, or 4. take 8, 16, 24, or 32 less damage when below 40% health. So whether that's a percentage or if that's literally, I think it must be a percentage because taking 8 damage wouldn't stop a lot. But 32% damage reduction when you're under 40% health is quite interesting. Bullpup weapon, gain 5, 10, 15 or 20% reload speed. Last Lament, increase your ammo count by 3, 6, 9 or 12. Again, it's quite a high amount, so there's probably a magazine size of 30 or more. And Perseverance, 1, 2, 3 or 4, gives your weapon 10, 20, 30 or 40% lifesteal when you're below 40% health. It's interesting that there's 2 cards relating to 40% health, so does this champion have a relatively large health pool, and are they able to maybe slightly tank out an enemy rather than necessarily bursting them down with damage? That could be interesting to find out. Now, my guess is that they are a flanker just because of the mobility and because a lot of their attacks are seeming to be trying to burst down an enemy and dual single targets, so that would be my best guess at the moment. But whatever's everybody else's speculation, be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Lazarus has also got some more information, and on SmartDataMining.com he's referred to as Mace Boy. So their default weapon is a mace, whether or not, I doubt it's a melee weapon, maybe it fires out orbs out of that mace. But this is the one that has the self-resurrection and has a chain attack, a bit like Xin, where each of the slashes does different amount of damage. And there's also references to Absorb Wall and Reverse Wall, whether or not this is what the ability is going to be called. But there's other abilities, Charge Blast, so some form of maybe charging up your mace to fire out something more powerful, or maybe Knockback. There's another one called Rush, so maybe charging forwards like Ash does. But the big one is Self-Resurrection. So once you die, and after 3 seconds, you resurrect on the battlefield, which in a lot of other games is as a more supporting ability, but on yourself is more almost extending your life as a tank. Maybe they don't have a huge health pool, maybe it's just that they use this self-resurrection to keep on the fight. In Dota 2, for example, Wraith King dies, and then he goes down, and then he gets up again, slows all the enemies around him, and you have to basically try and kill him again. But it could be quite interesting if Lazarus isn't too strong, or there's a sort of charge up time mechanic, or there's some form of gaining resources to be able to respawn again. And basically use that to be a frontliner in a different way. But on cosmetics, there seems to be maybe a variation of the Gundam we've got at the moment, because there's a black mecha listed. So maybe they're going to make a black version of the FN01, I think it's called, version of Fernando, which is quite a cool skin, and I'd be looking forward to that. It might look like some of the more villainous Gundams in the series. And that's the only one listed this time round. However, there were the ones Datamine last time: Genex Eclipse, Lian Goddess, Tyra M16A1, and an unknown kitten. Anyway, that was pretty much the data mining for OB57. What is all your speculation on everything I've mentioned and things coming forwards? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. If you like what you saw, hit the like button, subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, Joshino.